So the topic is the National Sunday Law. Okay, and I look on this on the Google regarding what is really the National Sunday. This is a Sunday law bill or legislation. It says here, and this is from Google actually. Sunday law legislation in America. Okay, so let's just look at some of the history. It says here that Sunday laws, historically known as the Blow laws, are state and local statutes in the United States that restrict or prohibit certain activities on Sundays, such as shopping, labor, or sale of specific goods. While many of these laws were repealed or eased in the late 20th century, some remain in force today. So there are some who actually exercise blow laws, like even the dealership. They're closed on Sunday. It says here also in the bottom, the first Sunday law in America was enacted in Virginia in 1610, requiring church attendance and forbidding worldly labor. By the late 17th century, similar laws were adopted across the colonies to enforce the Christian Sabbath. So, okay, there you go. Sorry. So it says here that enforcing the Christian Sabbath, and the next slide, it says here that McGowan versus Maryland, 1961, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of Sunday laws, ruling that while they had religious origins, they now serve the secular purpose of providing a uniform day of rest. I think this is what they really want, to have a uniformity of Sabbath, okay, day of rest for all citizens. Modern enforcement, today roughly 18 states maintain some form of Sunday closing laws, often enforced at the local level. Common modern restrictions include alcohol sales, that's why car dealership actually, including Texas, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, prohibit car sales on Sundays. Here in Oklahoma, it's the same thing. Also, one of the most famous remaining strict blue laws exists here, where most retail businesses, including large malls, must close on Sundays. So there are some malls also are closed on Sundays. And lastly here, this is just from the, before we go into the Word of God though, let me just show you this. In 1888, remember there was a push of enforcing the National Sunday Law, but it says here in 1888, it says here Senator Henry Blair introduced a bill to the 50th Congress to make Sunday observance mandatory nationwide. It was famously opposed by the Seventh-day Adventist leader Alonzo T. Jones, who argued it violated the First Amendment, and the bill ultimately failed. That was in 1888. So, it did not happen. Now, currently, it says here, 2025 to 2026, the Heritage Foundation proposal, a recent report titled Saving America by Saving the Family by the Heritage Foundation, has sparked debate by recommending that states and municipalities enact uniform day of rest, laws to restrict commercial activity on Sunday. So this is really the plan here, that we will have a uniform of keeping the Sabbath, okay, of worship, day of worship. This is the plan. And the question is whether this legislation has been already being approved. Okay, we don't have no record of that, but we know that it's there already. To me, I think it's been approved, except it's not being enforced. That's all. Okay, except it's not being enforced. So here in the book of Revelation, let's look at the book of Revelation. Okay, that way we don't have to be surprised. If this thing happens, it's because it is being prophesied. Okay? Here in Revelation 13, this is what it says here. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and we're talking about the United States here. The word, this he here is the United States, okay, according to the prophecy. He had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So United States has two horns, and he speak like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Now, in the great controversy, this lamb-like beast, why he is called like a lamb-like beast, and he had two horns, okay? And we need to understand what is these two horns actually symbolize, and why he is called a lamb-like beast, or lamb-like horns. It says here that he had two horns like a lamb. The lamb-like horns indicate youth, innocence, and gentleness, fitly representing the character of the United States when presented to the prophet as coming up in 1798. Now, 1798 is very significant because this is the year when the Pope was taken captive by General Berthier, okay? And it says here that republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of the nation. Republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of the nation. These principles are the secret of its power and prosperity. The oppressed and downtrodden throughout the Christendom have turned to this land with interest and hope. Millions have sought its shores, and the United States has risen to a place among the most powerful nations of the earth. So the United States has been being prophesied here that is going to be the most powerful nation of the earth, okay? And it says here that many were driven across the ocean to America, and here lay the foundations of civil and liberty, religious liberty, which have been the bulwark and glory of this country. So basically, this republicanism and Protestantism, civil and religious liberty, that means you can worship God according to the dictates of your conscience. I mean, this country gives you the freedom to worship in your own. Yeah, you're not being forced. You're not being controlled. You have the freedom here to worship. That's the two fundamental principles here in the United States. You know, and also here, let me just include this here. The difference between the two, the republicanism and Protestantism, that republicanism, it says sovereignty resides in the people who elect representatives to govern, okay? The necessity of resisting corruption. That means they don't want corruption. And Protestantism, meaning to say it centers on justification by faith alone. That's the belief here that we're saved by grace. The belief that salvation is a gift of grace and not earned by works, okay? Now, let me go to the next one here. Is the National Sunday Law. Okay, now we know that the National Sunday Law is being prophesied that it is going to happen. Now the question is it going is it going to happen only here in the United States? Okay? Because a lot of people are thinking that we need to get out of the United States because this is the country that is going to bring this. Now, is there another place that you can go actually? Here in Last Day Events, it says here, as America, the land of religious liberty, shall unite with the papacy in enforcing the conscience and compelling men to honor the full Sabbath, the people of every country on the globe will be led to follow her example. So in other words, every nation will follow the United States. Okay? So there is no place actually wherever you can go. I mean, the whole world will follow the United States. So it says here that the Sabbath question is to be the issue in the great final conflict with which all the world will act a part. Foreign nations will follow the example of the United States. Though she leads out, yet the same crisis will come upon our people in all parts of the world. So in other words, the same crisis that will come over there. If you go to the Philippines, it's still the same. You will still be persecuted. The same persecution that you will have here in the U.S. Okay? Now, the biggest question is, how will the United States successfully in enforcing the National Sunday Law? Okay, now let's study this. How will the United States is going to enforce this though? Can he enforce it without any help from the churches? I mean, I don't think the United States can just enforce it, because if it was opposed in 1888 by the Adventists, he's going to be opposed again today, right? So how will he successfully enforce it though? That's the question. So let's go to Revelation 13 again, the same book, that we can see here that before he can enforce it, there must be something that will happen. Okay? It says here, the United States had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Okay? That the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he, United States, caused it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So America will have it says here, he will have the power to give life unto the image of the beast. He will give power to the image of the beast. The question is, what is the image of the beast? Okay, the image of the beast represents all the Protestant churches. Okay, in other words, America is going to give power to the churches here. So, but how will the image of the beast be formed? It says here in Greek controversy, when the leading churches of the United States, uniting upon such points of doctrine as are held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce their decrees and to sustain their institution, then Protestant America will have formed an image of the Roman hierarchy, and the infliction of civil penalties upon dissenters will inevitably result. So in other words, when all the churches unite, okay? In other words, if there is no unity, I don't think America is going to enforce it, because everyone has to be united. Okay? So there cannot be an enforcement of the Sunday law if all the churches are not going to unite. So there must be a unity, and it is being prophesied that churches is going to unite. Okay? The churches is going to unite. It says here in Greek controversy, this is the final warning, the chapter entitled The Final Warning, 607, paragraph 1. It says here, as the controversy extends into new fields, and the minds of the people are called to God's downtrodden law, Satan is astir. In other words, there will be some people, actually, there's going to be a movement who will actually proclaim the message of the third angel. It says here, the power attending the message will only madden those who oppose it. In other words, there is going to be a message, a unique message that everyone is going to oppose it. They're not going to be happy with it. And this kind of message is the final warning. This is the loud cry message that the enemy doesn't want it. Okay? Because they're going to oppose it. It says it will only madden those who oppose it. The clergy will put forth almost superhuman efforts to shed away the light, lest it should shine upon their flocks. By every means at their command, they will endeavor to suppress the discussion of these vital questions. The church appeals to the strong arm of civil power, and in this work, Papists and Protestants unite. As the movement for Sunday enforcement becomes more bold and decided, the law will be invoked against commandment keepers. So, first, there's going to be a message that will be proclaimed. And as this message is being proclaimed, because this message is attended by the power of the Holy Spirit, then many will oppose this message. And the churches is not going to like this kind of message. That's why it says here that the church will appeal to the strong arm of civil power. Now, we're not talking about what church, though. We're talking about every church. Because we're, in other words, God is going to God is going to use like a group of people who's going to proclaim this message. We know that if you are a Seventh-day Adventist, there will be some kind of people who will actually bring this message, and that the church is going to oppose that. And because they cannot resist the power of the message, they're going to appeal to the civil power. And then when the government is going to approve it, then this is the time that the Protestants and Papists will unite. And then what's going to happen when they are united? The movement for Sunday enforcement becomes more bold and decided, and then the law will be invoked against commandment keepers. That means the Sunday law is going to be enforced. But first, there will be a message first, okay? And also, if the churches are going to unite, though, that means there's going to be a time that our own church will give up the Sabbath. Because how can there be a unity if they're not going to give up the Sabbath, right? Because we're talking about Sunday here, Sunday enforcement. So it says here in Greek controversy, another quotations, it says here, but God still has a people in Babylon, and before the visitation of his judgment, these faithful ones must be called out, that they partake not of our sins and receive not of our plagues. Hence, the movement symbolized by the angel. So, this angel who is coming down, remember we studied that the Revelation 18, the mighty angel who comes down and unite with the third, represents a movement here. Okay? The movement symbolized by the angel coming down from heaven, lightening the earth with his glory, and crying mightily with a strong voice, announcing the sins of Babylon. So this is the message that is actually going to make the enemies oppose it. Will only madden them because they don't like it. You know, when you try to announce the sins of Babylon, when you try to denounce the churches, they don't like this kind of message. So it says here, in connection with this message, the call is heard, come out from my people. This announcement, uniting with the third angel's message, constitute the final warning to be given to the inhabitants of the earth. So in other words, there is going to be a final warning, and the final warning is included in this message. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins. God is going to bring this final warning so that people will be aware, you know, and also they will have a decision to make whether they want to stay or not, because all the churches are going to unite. What's going to happen if you are in that church and the church that you are in unites with the papacy? What you going to do? Are you going to stay there? Okay, so it says here in early writings and other quotations, the work of this angel comes in at the right time to join in the last great work of the third angel's message as it swells to a loud cry. And the people of God are thus prepared to stand in the hour of temptation, which they are soon to meet. I saw a great light resting upon them, and we're talking about the movement here, those company of people, a small group of people, they united to fearlessly proclaim the third angel's message. In other words, they're not scared. They're not they're not gonna be scared, even though they will be persecuted, but they will proclaim the message fearlessly. Okay. Now, at this time, when the message is being proclaimed louder, the church and the state shall unite. Okay, church and state shall unite. It says here in Last Events, 134, paragraph 3, when Protestant churches shall unite, okay, that means they're going to unite with the secular power to sustain a false religion, for opposing which their ancestors endured the fiercest persecution, then will the papal Sabbath be enforced by the combined authority of church and state. So when will the Sunday law is going to be enforced? Is when all the churches, the Protestant churches, will unite with the papacy. Then the enforcement of Sunday is going to happen. Okay? So it says here that there will be a national apostasy which will end only in national ruin. So there is a call here, there is a final call to God's people. Because when all the churches are going to unite, the enforcement of Sunday law is going to happen. Okay. Now, what will happen though to God's people if they are there, if they belong to one of the church that is actually uniting with the papacy? Now, do you think that our own church are going to give up the Sabbath? If the Adventist is going to join with the papacy, because that's the only way that the Sunday law is going to be enforced. Okay, if they still going to resist that, that means the same thing with 1888, that they're going to rebuttal that it is a it's a violation of the First Amendment.
Unconstitutional.
Yeah, it's unconstitutional. So in other words, there's going to be a time that the church is going to give up the Sabbath. Now, is it prophesied that they will give up the Sabbath? It says here in Review and Herald, we'll find out if the Seventh-day Adventists will give up the Sabbath. It says here, the Lord has a controversy with his professed people in these last days. In this controversy, men in responsible positions will take a course directly opposite to that pursued by Nehemiah. They will not only ignore and despise the Sabbath themselves, but they will try to keep it from others by burying it beneath the rubbish of custom and tradition. In churches and in large gatherings in the open air, ministers will urge upon the people the necessity of keeping the first day of the week. Now, there's people today who say, no, that's not the Adventist. Now, what church do you think is this? I mean, we're not talking about the Baptist, the Methodist. They're already keeping Sunday. Okay? So what church is this that Ellen G. White is talking about? The only church that keeps the Sabbath is the Adventist. So that means this quotations is applicable to them, because it says here, in churches and in large gatherings in the open air, ministers will urge upon the people the necessity of keeping the first day of the week. In other words, there will be a time that the Adventist is going to give up the Sabbath, because that is the only way that the national Sunday law is going to be enforced. Remember, people are saying, oh, we need to prepare for the Sunday law. But they're not actually telling people to stay away from the church, because the church will unite. And if you are there inside the church, you will become partakers. And that's why there is a call. Okay. Now it says here, there are calamities on sea and land, and these calamities will increase, one disaster following close upon another. And the little band of conscientious Sabbath keepers will be pointed out as the ones who are bringing the wrath of God upon the world by their disregard of Sunday. So calamities are going to be happening. And this people, this little band of people who are proclaiming the gospel, they will be pointed out as the cause of these calamities. And so that's why there's going to be a enforcement of the Sunday law, and that perhaps after that there will be a death decree as well. There will be a death decree after that. Okay? So Sunday keeping will be enforced by all the denominations. Okay? It's not going to be the America is just behind it, but it is the churches who will enforce this. They will be the ones as a medium here to bring people inside, because once you are inside, you are worshiping the beast, you are worshiping the image of the beast, and you're receiving the mark of the beast. So it says here in Great Controversy 448, okay, Sunday keeping will be enforced by all the denominations. It says the enforcement of Sunday keeping on the part of Protestant churches. Now, is the Adventist a Protestant or no? It's a big one, right? The biggest Protestant. So the enforcement of Sunday keeping on the part of the Protestant churches is an enforcement of the worship of the papacy of the beast. Those who, understanding the claims of the fourth commandment, choose to observe the false instead of the true Sabbath, are thereby paying homage to that power by which alone it is commanded. But in the very act of enforcing a religious duty by secular power, the churches would themselves form an image to the beast. Hence, the enforcement of Sunday keeping in the United States would be an enforcing of the worship of the beast and his image. So, so there is this is a very important thing for us to decide, because if your church is going to be connected, unite with this, that means what you're gonna do. Okay, now you know that when you remain connected to a church, and your church is uniting with the papacy, there is what we call corporate responsibility. And we can go to that at the end of this. Okay? So this time, God's remnant people will face severe penalties, persecution actually. When Sunday law is going to be enforced, there will be some severe persecution that will happen to God's people. Okay? Now, it says here in Revelation 13 again, it says here, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So in other words, you cannot buy, you cannot sell, unless you have the mark or the name of the beast. Unless you worship Sunday, unless you connect yourself to the church, then you will have the freedom to buy and sell. Okay? And here in Desire of Ages, it says here in Desire of Ages 121, paragraph 3, in the last great conflict of the controversy with Satan, those who are loyal to God will see every earthly support cut off, because they refuse to break his law in obedience to earthly powers. They will be forbidden to buy or sell. It will finally be decreed that they shall be put to death. Revelation 13, 11 to 17. So in other words, God's people at this time, they will be persecuted. Every earthly support cut off, meaning to say no electricity, no water. No, we still have water because our water is from the rain. But no electricity, no propane. If you have a 500-gallon tank of propane, maybe you still have some remaining there. But you're not able to buy. Okay? You cannot go to the market and buy food because at this time you will be forbidden to buy. So we need to decide, right now what's going to happen though. When this thing is being imposed, this is the kind of persecution that we will face. Every earthly support cut off. Okay? And what's going to happen though? What happens when all the churches are united in enforcing Sunday observance and you continue to cling to your church? Okay? What's going to happen if, all the churches united in enforcing Sunday observance, and you continue to cling to your church? Remember what happened in the destruction of Jerusalem. How many Jewish people actually cling to the temple of Jerusalem? More than 1 million, and they all perished there. And it should give us a good example of what's going to happen in our time, because if more than 1 million perish, it will be beyond that number, because if they all cling. Remember how many, was there a Christian that perished at the destruction of Jerusalem?
No.
It says there not one Christian perished. Why? Because they actually obey the sign of Christ. When Christ told them to get out, they got out. Okay? So it says here, when Sunday observance shall be enforced by law. Okay? So what will happen to those people who cling? Okay? Those who cling, what will happen to them? It says here, but when Sunday observance shall be enforced by law, and the world shall be enlightened concerning the obligation of the true Sabbath, then whoever shall transgress the command of God to obey a precept which has no higher authority than that of Rome will thereby honor popery above God. He is paying homage to Rome and to the power which enforces the institution ordained by Rome. He is worshiping the beast and his image. You will be worshiping the beast and his image. As men then reject the institution which God has declared to be the sign of his authority, and honor instead that which Rome has chosen as the token of her supremacy, they will thereby accept the sign of allegiance to Rome, the mark of the beast. It is not until the issue is thus plainly set before the people, and they are brought to choose between the commandments of God and the commandments of man, that those who continue in transgression will receive the mark of the beast. So if you continue to cling, you will what? Receive the mark of the beast. So we know that all these things are being, it's just a prophecy, but it's going to happen because it's been predicted already. So why we have to wait? Why we have to wait? We have to decide right now. I mean, salvation is, I mean, who give us salvation? Only Christ, right? I mean, can the church give you salvation? No, only Christ can give us salvation. Can the minister give you salvation? No, only Christ. John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto me, to the Father, but by me. Only Christ. So in other words, all we need to do is come to Christ because He is the only one that can save us. Now, what happens if you receive the mark of the beast? What happens if you receive the mark of the beast? In Revelation 14, this is the third angel's message here. Okay? It says here, Revelation 14, 9 to 11, and the third angel followed him, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image. Now, you will be worshiping the image here because you are already inside the church. Okay? And remember, all the churches are going to unite to the papacy. That means you're worshiping the beast, you're worshiping the image, and you are receiving the mark of the beast. Then what's going to happen to you though? If you have those things, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. In other words, you will drink of this wrath of God without mixture. Okay? Now, what is the mixture here talking about? Grace. Do you think grace will still be there? No, without mixture. There is no grace at this time because probation already closed. Okay? So, and it says here, he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night. So, do they have a rest? Okay. It says here, they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. That means there is no rest for those people who are actually. Okay, hold on, let me try to see if I can. Let me see. Okay, hold on. Okay, there's a microphone that is open actually. So I'm not able. I cannot see the. I cannot see the cursor. I'm not able to see it. But anyway, I'm in my last slide after this. So in other words, if you receive the mark of the beast, you worship the beast, you worship the image of the beast, you will have the full wrath of God. Okay. And what is the wrath of God? What is the wrath of God? The 7 last plagues. The 7 last plagues. And that's why there is a final call. There is a call for God's people. Okay? And that final call is recorded in Revelation 18. Okay, this is my final slide. And it's in the Bible. It says here in Revelation 18, 1 to 5, and after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Remember, we studied this, that this angel here is the mighty angel, is not a created being, okay? Is not a regular angel being created by Christ. This is representing the Holy Spirit, who's going to unite with the third angel's message to give power and force to the message. Okay? So this angel comes down, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And then he's coming down, he's not coming down silently here. He's coming down with a message. And what is his message? He cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitations of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Now, Babylon the Great, we know who Babylon the Great is. Who's Babylon the Great? Who's the mother of harlots? It's Rome, okay? The Roman Catholic. And of course, if she is the mother, does she have daughters? Yes, she has daughters. Daughters are churches that cling to her doctrines and traditions. And that's why it says here, when this angel comes down, he's not coming down silently, but he announced that Babylon the Great is fallen. And also in verse 3, For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath over fornication. Now, what are nations represent here? Okay,
denomination.
denomination. We're not talking about countries here. We're talking about denominations. That means all denominations, all churches have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So this mighty angel comes down with this message. And then in verse 4, it says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. So the final call is being given to God's people here. And they have to make a decision though. Because if they remain in a denomination or a church, what's going to happen? Even if they're faithful, they're honest Christian. And if they remain there, what's going to happen? They will become partakers of the sins of the church. And because of being partakers, they will also receive the plagues. And that's why, I know that there's some honest people that are there. But you cannot be called honest and when you are being called by Christ. And if you disobey by Christ calling you, then you cannot be called faithful at the end. You are faithful right now, but when Christ calls you and you deny that call, what's going to happen? You will become partakers. Because Amos 3:3, can two walk together except to be agreed? If you agree with Christ, then you obey him. That's what it says there, John 14:15. If you love me, keep my commandments. Okay? So there is a call actually for God's people that we need to stay away from this, because the National Sunday Law are going to take place, but all the churches have to be united. Okay? And people are saying, oh, it's very imminent now. There's videos that you can find in the YouTube that the National Sunday is imminent. It's gonna be having soon. But the question is, are they giving the message? There has to be a message first. What kind of message? The loud cry message has to be preached so that people can be warned. So we need to be more specific in our gospel, that we need to proclaim this loud cry, because this is the message that will actually bring the National Sunday Law. That will hasten the National Sunday Law. Because once we do that, they will oppose the message, and it will only madden them, and they will. It says there that they will seek the civil power. They will appeal to the civil government. And then when the civil government, when all the churches are united together, they will unite and support with the papacy. That is when the National Sunday Law is going to be enforced. So I hope and pray that before these things happen, we have to make decision whether we should stay with Christ and follow him faithfully, because serving Christ, actually, you don't have to be inside there. You can serve God wherever you are. Okay? So it's